Welcome, my friends, to Shakin' the Salt with Dr. Peppers. My bio reads from troubled teen to teacher of the year, 100-pound weight loss, blah, blah, blah. You know, the sort of thing you're working on in your before and after life story. So at the end of the message, stay tuned if you want to contact me for any reason, including prayers. Thank you. And I'm Dr. Peppers, Shakin' the Salt. Here we go. As children bring their broken toys with tears for us to mend, I brought my broken dreams to God because He was my friend. And then instead of leaving Him in peace to work alone, I hung around and tried to help with ways that were my own. At last I snatched them back and cried, "How could you be so slow?" "My child," He said, "what could I do? You never did let go." I was honored to be one of the guest speakers at a beautiful ladies' conference at a local church this past weekend, and I love the example that I often tell in many of my presentations about the little boy that finds a cocoon with a little worm in it, a little caterpillar, something that he thought was going to eventually be a butterfly, and he was right. So he saw that the cocoon was pretty thick and it wasn't breaking yet, so he thought he'd poke a hole in it and try to help, which he did. And as he poked holes in a circumference around the middle of the cocoon, eventually he saw the beautiful little pattern in the middle of the wings that were starting to form of a beautiful monarch butterfly. So as he made this little incision all the way around and he opened it up, there it was with its beautiful monarch wings just perched, ready to fly. So he takes it gently in his hand and he throws it in the air and splat to the ground. Now, why was this? Well, because the little monarch butterfly, in its strength gained, is because it is pressing against the outside of the cocoon. Isn't this a great analogy of when we have felt like we were in a dark place being formed, nobody seeing us, having only known ourselves as worms or as caterpillars or whatever it was, then suddenly we get to burst forth if we go through the process of also stretching our faith, stretching to get the strength that comes from going through the trials and struggles to become what God had intended us to be in the first place. But in today's society that is pretty entitled, many of our children, grandchildren, and perhaps even some of us, I'm pointing backwards at myself, were pretty spoiled as a child. We didn't learn by doing. We learned by watching and not ever really wanting to participate because it was easier to just sit back and, kind of get out of the hard work, get out of the pressing against the cocoon wall, so to speak. So I had this cute little girl that was in the audience, Avery, and I asked her to come down, and I had ordered a pair of wings that were folded into it was kind of like a cape, but you could put your arms through the loops and then attach the other part to your fingers, so that at first she was all wrapped up like in a cocoon, but then when the time was right, I let her bing, little by little, as she opened those beautiful butterfly wings. And she took off flying better than anyone has ever done in any of my conferences, especially when I've used older people. And she flew to the back of the room, and I said, "Fly on, Avery, and keep those beautiful wings." I know this is just kind of a cute little analogy, as the broken toys are, but many times we cannot see, especially when we're going through the dark times and the trials and tribulations, we cannot see that something is going to be worked out from this. We can't possibly recognize that this could ever be used for good. And especially when it's times where we have maybe caused the incidents ourselves, which was my case pretty much because I wasn't a troubled teenager who had been abused and neglected and didn't have a good home life. On the contrary, I was one who had been pretty much entitled and spoiled and helped out when I should have had to go through the growing pains that most people do. So if you have gone through something, I truly believe in all of the cases I have ever known of people going through trials, even if it was friends, family, or acquaintances, I have seen that if they go through those trials and learn from them and not try to just sweep them under the rug, but to really use those trials, they come out in the beautiful formation that God intended them to be. And then those of us that make it through that are able to go back and not just hide our past, but to tell others, look what I went through. You're going through this now. Let me encourage you. I always say where you've been hurt the most is where God will use you to help others the most. And I truly believe that because I've never been through a divorce. I've had friends and family members who have and tell me how hurting it is and how they can hardly get over it. But there's nobody better to help one going through it than one who has actually been there, done that, and not just made it through, but actually succeeded and went above and beyond. Maybe it's cancer, as my sweet 94-year-old mom had breast cancer at 85. Now she is able to go into the hospital rooms and the waiting rooms, especially in the mammogram areas, and to tell others who are facing that dreaded C word, especially for women, breast cancer. Now she is able to go in and tell them what she's been through and what God brought her out of and how he brought her to. And at 94, she still drives herself once a week to the Bible study that she attends with 200 other women. She still helps my brother take care of his ministry and open his letters and read some of them and do some of his housework. Yes, she even does his laundry, but I can't complain because my husband does ours too. So some of us are spoiled in our later years, and some of us were spoiled in our earlier years, but believe me, there was that transition, that cocoon stage I had to go through where I learned the fight was in the struggle, and that if I would allow the process to work without trying to shove my way out or ask somebody else to help me out, I eventually got through that, and I learned that my purpose is to help other teenagers or young women go through the struggles of life that they're facing. So, my friend, whatever it is you're facing, I want to remind you that there was a great song that was written that was something beautiful by the Gaithers, something good, all my confusions he understood. All I had to offer him was brokenness and strife, but he made something beautiful of my life. And my friend, he's doing that in you. Perhaps you're already on the beautiful end. Now it's your turn to go back and help others. If you're struggling, find somebody that has made it through, that has gone through what you're going through, and ask them if they could help. I promise you they will be glad to. God, I lift up before you my brothers and sisters who are struggling right now, those who are facing troubles in perhaps addictions, perhaps their family members, maybe they're facing a serious illness or a problem in their marriage or with their children. God, whatever it is, whether it's finances or personal health, Lord, I just ask that you would strengthen them. You have promised that you would be closer than a brother and lift them up. And I lift them up right now too, God, in faith, knowing that what you've done for one, you'll do for another. And I thank you in advance, in Jesus' name. God bless you, my friend. Get into the Word today and find out what He says. I'm Dr. Peppers, shaking the salt. Thanks for staying on, my friend. If you would like to contact me, visit saltandlightministry.com. If you want to share your story with me, ask a question, have me come speak to your group, or maybe just request prayer. Once again, saltandlightministry.com. Thanks and God bless.